8 to 10 feet of packed logs and lumber and stuff on top, and these things would have been built into the ground. If you kind of go back and forth, you can see all the squishy water down here. When you get through it, this is the lowest section of the trench in through here. And there's 6 inches of water below you guys that are underneath the ductworks. We have to pump this out on a regular basis, just like they did back in World War I. We pumped it out 3 times today to keep the water out. It'll be over the ductboards and everything will be wet in the morning when we get it back out here. Because when you cut a giant hole in the middle of a field, it fills up because you built a well. And the same thing happened in World War I. A lot of the fields that they had in northern France, where it was kind of hilly, as long as they weren't in the low spot, it wasn't so bad. But like areas around Passchendaele on the Belgian border, closer to the English Channel, where the British were, absolutely horrible conditions. They couldn't go any more down maybe than like this deep. And most of the time they were kneeling in trenches because the trenches only came up exhausted trying to cross no man's land in the mud. They would die of exhaustion in the middle of the field, or they'd get swallowed up and drowned in the mud. It was pretty horrible stuff. The rats we mentioned, as you go through, the center bunker here is lived in. You'll see what the living conditions are with the German soldiers that are in these trenches. And this is pretty typical what you saw. These guys would live here. They didn't want to be here. Keep in mind, like, where do you go to the bathroom and stuff like that in the middle of the trench because you can't get out to go pee. There's some bad living conditions. The rats would eat the dead bodies. They would come into the trenches at night to try to stay warm in the bunkers and that, but would also try to eat the food. And they got pretty aggressive to where they would just crawl over soldiers and stuff like that. So they would also often go around with clubs in rat killing parties to try to kill as many rats as you can. We have collections of like hundreds of photos of all these guys holding up strings of rats and stuff like that to show their kill. It is something that they did on a regular daily basis because otherwise the rats would eat their food. They would get bitten by them. They had issues with hepatitis and all kinds of stuff in the trenches. The firing steps are designed so you could actually step up to the firing step and it'd be about right here, so you could actually fire over the trench, but then you could step down and be in the protection of underground. These trenches are typical of what you would see with the Germans because they're much nicer. When you go over to the Allied trench, you'll see that it's very rudimentary and the trench is really low, and they're sleeping literally in holes in the ground in very unimproved positions. That was deliberate because the Allies did not want their guys to get comfortable. You're not here to be comfortable. You're here to go assault the Germans and kick them out of France. So the Allied High Command, especially on the British side, didn't want them to have nice, pretty billets and things like that. The Germans, on the other hand, said, well, we need to make people comfortable and as safe as possible because they were here for the duration. All we need to do is hold them, and we will eventually break through with either technology advances or through stormtrooper tactics that they used very successfully in 1918 to infiltrate positions. Instead of mass waves, you have sent in small groups with grenade throwing and stuff like that. And once you take out a sectional line, then you could have all the rest of your guys come over to infiltrate. When you guys walk through here, I'll tell you about the machine gun first. This is an 08-15 Maxim. This is a 1915 innovation from the earlier 08 Maxim that weighed about 60 pounds or so. This one only weighs like 45, so it's really lightweight compared to what they had. The heavy machine gun also took like a 60 or 80 pound mount. This one doesn't have a mount, it has a bipod, so you can cut quite a bit of weight and it is easier for these guys to go across the field. But they're still carrying like 2 gallons of water in that tube that's up there. And then there's the water can that you would have to carry to put extra water in here. You dump some of it out. But you'd have to carry water to cool it. We also, when we built this machine gun, cool it the same way so the barrel doesn't overheat. When the barrel overheats, it'll actually get so hot that it will eventually start cooking off rounds before it even gets into the chamber, which is obviously more dangerous to this guy than the guy downrange. So there's a little bit of physics involved in here. You could either have a really heavy barrel, you could use water. After World War II, they said, hey, wouldn't it make sense if we just change the barrels out really fast? So all modern machine gun systems that we use today are now based with a quick change barrel system that the Germans developed, ironically, in 1934.